Many people use ChatGPT to create articles in the hope of raising their visibility in the search engines. And it sounds all very efficient and a very quick way to write a new article, but it often leads to very generic pages that add very little and also don't really drive any traffic or any clicks. We ran into a version of this problem with English Express, which is an English language school in Singapore. They ranked well in Google, they have visibility, but like many websites, they were facing a zero-click reality. So people were getting what they needed from the Google AI overviews, and they didn't see any need to click through to the site anymore. We could see this in the statistics, and we decided that we had to change our goal. So instead of aiming to just rank higher in Google, we aimed for creating content that could actually influence the answer itself. And I'll show you an example of what we reached in a moment. After that, I'll show you how we actually use a workflow to get original content from subject matter experts, and we turn that into a valuable article that actually influences what the AI overview says. So I've here made a search of British Council versus English Express. This is based on a conversation with Alex, the owner of the school. He gets this question, right? So how are you different from British Council? You are cheaper, does it mean you're not as good? These kinds of objections. And so we felt that we want to influence Google when people ask for it. And honestly, the number of people that is exactly Googling for this keyword is negligible. But as we'll see later, there are other questions where Google uses an article that we have developed to inform its answer. So if you see what happens here, it contrasts the British Council as a prestigious large-scale provider offering courses. And English Express focuses on smaller, intimate classes of maximum 8 with higher teacher-student interaction rate, emphasizing rapid feedback, tailored, flexible, small group, or one-to-one sessions. So if you make the same search, you probably find something else. But the article we wrote is informing Google, and usually a lot of our agenda flows through to what Google writes. If you know what to write and how to do that, it's not hard to make Google bend to your will here. So you can see below here the types of articles, pages that the AI overview has used to inform this, and they will always look for multiple sources, so it's never going to be based only on what you provide. So you see that it has taken this specific article that we wrote for this question, it has gone to the homepage of English Express, it has gone to YouTube for review of British Council, it has obviously what you put on your website, but also what you provide elsewhere is going to inform the answers that Google will provide people, and the same goes for ChatGPT and other engines. So it's important that we know what people ask first of all, and what questions we want to influence, and then we can actually come up with what types of articles we want to add. So let's dive into the article that we wrote and how we wrote it. This is the article. It's now a few months old, and as you see, it starts with a question that tends to work quite well. And for this article, I have interviewed Alex and asked him, so when people compare you with the British Council, what do you tell them? And then he said, what I always do is I say that all of our teachers have a CELTA certification, which is the same that British Council requires. So I use this argument to convince people that they are not taking a step down in quality when they come to us. And This whole article uses Alex's point of view, which is informed by many conversations that he has had with prospective students on the phone, on WhatsApp, etc. And so depending of course on what you are writing articles on, it's really important to get that first person's point of view into it, because otherwise it will be, you know, the same stale, boring AI type of article, and you don't want that. So you need the original point of view. You need to answer a question that people actually ask. A question and answer format works well because people tend to prompt or ask questions. So then when you keep things short, it can take short pieces of answers to that question and repurpose it in the answer. And the article is also meant to help people make a decision. So we provide the framework here of like, okay, so if you are choosing between different language schools, what are the things that you should think about? And we try to be, on the one hand, honest about it, but of course, English Express also believes in the way that it teaches, so we're not hiding that. We try to be factual. We also link to a JSTOR, link to a meta-analysis on learning and group size and the relation between that. For pricing, for example, we even link to the British Council itself, and then you have frequently asked questions below to sort of sum it up. And below here is a level test that can be taken. So there is some sort of CTA when people click through, but a lot of people will actually just read this in the AI overview, or they will see portions of this in their ChatGPT. So our goal is really to influence those answers. So how do we make articles like this? Here is the workflow, and mind you, you may not be able to use exactly the same tools. You may have restrictions. So I use Fathom to record Teams calls. The nice thing about Fathom is that it captures a transcript. So you just go to transcript, you can copy the transcript, you can paste that in ChatGPT, and then you can say, hey, in this transcript we are discussing 2 article ideas. Can you extract what the main points that we discussed? Then I have already captured ChatGPT's answer, and this is really crucial for it not to become AI slop, because we are going to use ChatGPT to create this kind of article. Then we need to find out still what keyword that we want to rank for, and in this case we're going to write an article about how to choose which course is appropriate for you when you learn English, and it's going to be Singapore focused. It's always useful to be location focused because that makes you much easier to stand out. There's just a lot less content competing against you. So what I did is I went to SEMrush, I searched for Learn English Singapore to find out what kind of questions people ask. We want to find a question that can be the sort of the main keyword for our article, and I'm finding it here as where to learn English in Singapore, and this is what I see. There's 2 ads, including one from English Express. Then there is the Google Maps result. Then we have British Council, MDIS, and TUC Learning Hub, discussion forums, Reddit. There are articles there, but there isn't actually a really good article that helps people decide where to learn English. So we are going to create that article, and because English Express is already an established school, that article can rank. There's simply no one offering it, and that's why Google isn't showing this kind of article. So to do that, we go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you the flow here. Of course, there's going to be waiting times, but the convenient thing is that I can cut those out. I've built this English Express article writer together with Alex, and it is really custom made for English Express, but it is also a framework that can be customized for any other organization based on what their people need. I won't go very deep into this, but it basically is a set of instructions, because if you just go to ChatGPT and ask it to write an article about something, it will get it about 80% right, and then you spend like another 2 hours on tweaking all the other stuff. So we have decided to basically spend some time defining exactly what kind of article we want and what we want it to do step by step. And you can see here that we have some interactions or instructions here. Especially there is also a knowledge base with a style guide, some good and bad examples, because ChatGPT tends to have certain patterns that we don't want. So every time I see that kind of pattern, then we will capture that pattern and give an example of how it should be rewritten. Then there's a list of internal URLs that we want it to link to, and there is a persona doc that describes the kind of person that these articles have to address. Every time ChatGPT will do something and then throw us the result, we will review the result, we will tune the result, and then we'll go further. So going from how the GPT is set up on the back end, how do we actually use it? So I start off by providing the focus keyword as well as the input that we got from the interview with Alex, and then the GPT will ask us for all the other inputs that we have defined, and it will come up with its understanding, the questions that the article should answer, and it suggests 5 competing URLs that it should scan to see what's out there in the search engines, what we can add with an article, because there's no point in adding another article that covers the exact same thing as 5 competitors have already done. So we start with actually looking at what the search engine result page looks like right now and how we can add something valuable to it that earns the right for inclusion in the AI overviews. Then it goes out, takes some time to pull the topics, which are defined as entities, and covers content gaps, and then recommends an entity set, so the topics that the article should cover. And at this point, it will then ask for our feedback, and I will say that they're all good, but suggest some small tweaks. And that's the pattern that you're going to see all the time. So then it has a revised list to cover, and then it will create an outline which we can tighten up. From the outline, we then go into title, meta description. Then it will write a first draft, and then in that draft, as a next version after we've edited it, it will suggest internal links, which is important because we also want to funnel, whenever people do click through to the article, we want to funnel that traffic where possible to our products, to the courses, to the more important parts of the website. And external links are also important, and those links would then make the article credible and provide the backup to make this indeed an article that is perceived as valuable and not just some generic AI article. In each of these steps, ChatGPT gets it perhaps 80% right, so you have to tell it to tweak certain things, and that's the exact value of this workflow, that you let AI do the grunt work, so to say, but you still remain firmly at the wheel of what should be included, what shouldn't, what the focus should be. So how has this worked for us so far? Let's have a look at the results. First of all, here is the Google Search Console, and that is basically the back end of Google, which will tell you how often Google has actually shown a certain page in its search results. And I have filtered by the pages that we have created, and I made the scale weekly, and also I have only filtered for Singapore, and so you see that we started creating these articles mid-October. A few of the articles were updated, so that's why there is already some impressions, and we started with 126 impressions a week, and then it takes like a month or so before we start to see a rise. And of course articles were also added during this time, so you see an increased rise here, a little drop around Chinese New Year when nothing happens in Singapore, and this is where we are now. So if you look at the kind of keywords that get visibility, it will be things like Zephyr level, business English course. I mean, these are relevant keywords where and there are many, as you see, because we have 1,000 impressions a week or even more. So there's a very deep list of keywords for which we are visible in Google, in the search results, or in the AI overviews. Then I will switch to PowerPoint for a little moment. And this is a screenshot from peak.ai, which we use to track the visibility in Google's AI overviews, in ChatGPT, as well as in Perplexity. And so you can see that when we started, they were at about 30% visibility. That means that for the questions that we set up to track, where Peak AI will run the query once a day and then see whether English Express or any of the other brands are mentioned, and then it will keep the percentage. So on a day-to-day basis there is a high randomness factor, but over longer time it can be said that if you are included 40% of the time, then that really means a substantial change. So you see that in the period where we added the articles, we see the same rise in December that we also see in Google Search Console, and after that it's kind of flattened out a little bit, the visibility. But yeah, that's kind of where we got. So we moved from about 30% to around 50% visibility. So in a fairly short time frame, if you compare that to SEO, it often takes a lot longer to see meaningful results. Right. So so you can gain visibility really quickly in AI search. If you already have a high authority website, which many of us have, if you will have lots of parties linking to your website in one way or the other. So then really the ball is in your court to make sure that you think about which questions your website should answer, and then add that content. And despite all the talk about, let's say, video and social media and images, and of course what you add needs to look visually attractive, but still text is very easily processed by AI tools. So you just have to provide the text, have an original point of view. So don't try to just go through the motions and get the information from what's already ranking, but try to take your own point of view, answer questions that people really ask, should make sure the writing is accessible, questions and answers works really well. Help people make a decision, because a lot of these people will see something, or they will see an AI answer that is influenced by your article, and they may not see the actual article. So there's no point in writing articles that have nothing to do with your program and that can't mention you, because then maybe the AI answers get better, but it won't actually lead to any new students or anyone discovering you that way. Use credible sources. Use light CTAs, so you can definitely ask people to take a next step. For English Express, we usually refer to a level assessment test as a next step. And then you can streamline this process, as I've just shown, by using a custom GPT interviewing subject matter expert, and then plugging it into a custom GPT. And just to give you an idea, there is long waiting periods in between. So interview content, going through all the steps and verifying and checking and everything, it might take about 2 hours. But if you were to write this from scratch yourself, then it would easily be a day to create something similar. So the lesson here is not to use ChatGPT for SEO to speed things up or anything like that. The lesson is really that the quality of your workflow determines the eventual quality of your output, and there is no point in outputting content, articles or otherwise, that are not of a certain standard, because there is already so much content out there. So when you combine actual customer questions that people are wondering about, and then expert input and search intent, so you align it with what people are searching, and a proper review process, then you can create content that has a much better chance of being useful, and even when it's showing up in AI answers, will point towards you. But this kind of setup is always custom, so you have a different audience than English Express, so we can't just give you this custom GPT and tell you to use that. You will have to build your own custom GPT and use your style guide so that it becomes useful for your ideal student or your ideal customer. And that's exactly why I've created a mini course, and this will give you the blueprint, so the exact style guide that we used, so that you can adopt it, as well as guidance on how to actually do this, so that you can build your own process. And you can do this on ChatGPT, but you can also do this on Gemini or on another LLM if that's what you're using. You'll find a link below.